Here we are, right? More than 2 years into the pandemic, and a moment now the White House and the country has been bracing for ever since Inauguration Day. President Biden testing positive for COVID today. You know, during this whole pandemic, we've heard the White House talk about transparency and how transparent they want to be. And today, the president's posting a video on Twitter. He's saying basically he's okay.
I'm doing well. I'm getting a lot of work done. I'm going to continue to get it done. And in the meantime, thanks for your concern and keep the faith. It's going to be okay.
By the way, if you're looking at that, wondering, wait, who shot that video? Somebody wearing an N95 mask, according to the White House. This afternoon, the guy on the right side of your screen, the White House COVID response coordinator, Dr. Ashish Jha, says because the president is double vaxxed and he's double boosted, it should be a reminder that this administration's COVID strategy of vaccines and boosters is working.
And it's a reminder of the reason that we all work so hard to make sure that every American has the same level of protection that the president has, that every American has the same level of immunity, and why we have worked so hard to make sure that people have access to life-saving treatments like Paxlovid.
All right, so here is what we know at this moment about President Biden, who tested positive today. His symptoms are pretty mild: dry cough, runny nose, etc. He's getting treated with Paxlovid. No word yet on whether he might get monoclonal antibodies at some point. He's also isolating. There's a bare bones staff around him, right? They're down to just the essential staff at the White House residence. And you've got the White House in full contact tracing mode at this point, with the First Lady and the VP, both close contacts, both testing negative today. But listen, this is still the oldest president we've ever had at 79 years old. He's been out and about a bunch recently. You see it there. Meeting a bunch of people. He was in crowds last week. Israel, the West Bank, Saudi. Yesterday, Massachusetts. Today, he was supposed to be in Pennsylvania. As for which of these places the president may have actually contracted COVID, the White House says today it really doesn't matter, that's not the point. I want to bring in Mike Memoli to get into all of this. And Mike, I know it has been a fire drill of a day for you because this is big news, right? We've now, since the start of this pandemic, had two presidents. Both of them have now tested positive for COVID, but it's been two very different landscapes, right? From a time when we did not have vaccines, did not have the kind of abilities and treatments that we had when Donald Trump got COVID, now to Joe Biden here. Very different from what we've seen before.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to emphasize at this moment, Hallie, because one way in which this White House is trying to distinguish itself from its predecessor is in maximum transparency at this moment. We learned this morning at about 10:20 a.m. In a statement from the White House press secretary about the diagnosis. It wasn't long after that we heard directly from the First Lady, who was traveling in Michigan, speaking about what had happened and the fact that she was going to continue with her schedule. We heard moments later from the vice president's office as well. We heard in the form of a statement from the president's doctor about the kind of treatment he was already being given and the way they would monitor his symptoms going forward. This is something that the White House promises will continue in the days ahead. Of course, we had that briefing with Karine Jean-Pierre and Dr. Jha at the podium. We are being told that we'll get similar briefings on a daily basis moving forward. This is a White House that is trying to both match the seriousness of the moment, that they understand the country is concerned about the health of the president at age 79, but also not necessarily call it a crisis moment for this administration. There was a plan in place for just this moment. I actually was told about some elements of it a few months ago when you'll remember there was an outbreak of cases, especially around the Gridiron Dinner, the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and almost to a T they've been able to follow through on that plan today, Hallie.
Let's talk about what we've heard from the press secretary and from Dr. Jha, because this is a president, and you have to say his age, right? 79 years old, who's had mild symptoms, going about business as usual. And as we said in the introduction here, they're framing this, unsurprisingly, as proof that this COVID strategy is working. There is an optical piece of this, too, right? When you have Dr. Jill Biden, who is a close contact, who's continuing going about her schedule, wearing a mask, following CDC guidance, the White House is trying to show that they are sort of walking the walk and talking the talk when it comes to COVID mitigation.
You know, Hallie, you and I were covering the different sides of the 2020 presidential campaign, and we couldn't have been covering two greater contrasts in terms of how both campaigns handled it, Trump versus Biden. And it's actually, despite all the criticism of Biden's so-called basement strategy, doing mostly virtual events in those early months, then trying to figure out how to do what would become these drive-in rallies and the like, it was something that the White House, then the Biden campaign, felt despite all the criticism, the general public actually rewarded them for in terms of their votes. They thought that, yes, it was both the right thing to do to keep the president safe, then the candidate, but it was also something that spoke to the seriousness with which they were taking the issue, and that's carried through to the White House as well, emphasizing that we're at a different moment now, a year and a half into the administration, than we were when this president came into office.
Okay, so talk about moving forward, though, man, because I was listening to some of that briefing today from the White House press secretary, from Dr. Azar, the COVID coordinator, and there were questions about, okay, what happens after 5 days of this isolation or quarantine for President Biden? What happens to White House staff or you, right? A reporter who would go into that briefing room to be talking about and talking with staffers up in the West Wing, et cetera, where press is allowed to go. Are you going to have to wear masks again? Like, do things change at the White House because of this from that perspective?
So last week, Hallie, of course, the president was overseas. He was in the Middle East. But we had a briefing last week, actually, from Dr. Azar warning the American people about the more highly transmissible BA.5 variant. And I was in conversations with the White House last week about what the protocols were at the White House, really trying to make sure we understood that they were still the same or had been revised over time and whether they might change. And so a lot of focus on that now. I think we could hear that there were already plans in the works soon to revise those protocols in light of BA.5. I have to say, Hallie, just walking around the White House, as you do as a reporter, I have noticed staffers wearing masks more in the recent weeks already. I was asked by a senior official to put on a mask as I headed into a meeting with them recently. So this was something that they were already taking seriously, but there are a lot of questions now. The White House is in full contact tracing mode as a number of both lawmakers and staffers have been in and around with the president over the last few days, especially on that trip yesterday. And so we'll be tracking that moving forward, of course.
Mike Memoli, thank you very much for leading us off tonight. I appreciate it. Let me bring in now Dr. Natalie Azar for more on this. And Dr. Azar, let me ask you, the White House not at all sounding the alarm on this diagnosis. Every messaging point has been, from the president to his staff, he's doing okay. He's doing fine. He's doing great, even, as we heard from some. Mild symptoms. Yeah, he's tired. He's got fatigue. He's got a runny nose. He's got a dry cough. But he's not, from all accounts, from the White House, having anything more serious. Are you seeing anything? You've seen this video from President Biden that he put out today. We showed a clip of it. Do you see anything that raises alarm bells to you or no?
No, not necessarily, Hallie. And I mean, I think this just speaks to this concept that COVID illness is not a one-size-fits-all. I mean, it can present and behave in a myriad of ways in different folks. Look, not all 79-year-old people are created equal. Some people are very healthy 79-year-olds, as Joe Biden really is. You know, there is this thing that we call immune senescence, Hallie, which just simply means that in spite of all of our efforts to stay healthy, our immune systems do start to decline with age. And so, you know, therein is the logical conclusion that there can be complications from what could start off as a mild infection in someone who's older as opposed to someone who's younger. But his vaccinations obviously are going to protect him. And as I said, you know, as far as we know, if full transparency is what they're after, you know, he's taking some medications for cholesterol and atrial fibrillation. He's not immunocompromised. You know, he's a reasonably healthy 79-year-old, Hallie, so he should do fine. You mentioned two of those medications that the president typically takes, although I think Dr. Azar had said that he won't be taking them now that he's on Paxlovid, which is a treatment that you'd start like really early in a diagnosis. That's what makes Paxlovid, it seems, impactful here. Yeah. Is there anything else, Dr. Azar, that you might do? And I know you're not the president's physician, but that you might do to treat a 79-year-old with COVID? Like, are monoclonal antibodies on the table? Would they need to be? You know, here's the thing. It's a good question, and it's actually a question that I've asked myself, you know, for a number of patients. We just don't have any evidence base to make that recommendation, meaning I'm sure that it's being studied, but we certainly haven't had a clinical trial that showed that monoclonals plus antivirals are better than either one alone. You know, we just got a notification at my hospital recently that there's a significant shortage of monoclonal antibodies, and so Paxlovid is the first choice treatment for individuals who are at high risk for progression. And Paxlovid performed tremendously well in terms of preventing severe disease, albeit in unvaccinated individuals, but there's every reason to think that it's going to be beneficial for those individuals who are vaccinated too. You can't really beat 90%. That's a pretty good number. Yeah. That's better than even Tamiflu. So I don't think he'll get monoclonals. I think if he starts to get sicker, well, I shouldn't say that. If he starts to get sicker, yes, they're going to give him the kitchen sink, Hallie, but I don't think that that's necessarily going to happen. Real quick, Dr. Azar, pull back for a second, because what this feels like, what's happening at the White House
House with the president is kind of a microcosm of what we're seeing around the country with more and more people. And we're seeing this BA.5 variant spread. It's super contagious. It's now, I think, right, the most prevalent, going to be the most prevalent variant. This is a moment when I think a lot of folks might be stopping and taking a beat and saying, OK, where are we in the pandemic, right? Where are we as it relates to the fight against this virus?
The problem, Hallie, is that until the virus truly becomes nothing more than the common cold and no longer does these ridiculously awful things to people called long COVID, we just can't get too lackadaisical about it. I think for most of us who are otherwise reasonably healthy and our vax boosted, take Paxlovid, whatever, we're not going to die. But death isn't the only outcome. And that's the only issue, Hallie. That's where I still think we're treading pretty carefully before we get too glib about it and too, overconfident about it.
Dr. Hallie Azar, it's great perspective. It is a great reminder. Thank you so much. It's good to see you. Okay, so that's headline bucket number one. Big news for us today. In just a couple of hours, you've got big news piece number two that is going to be happening that you will watch right here on NBC News Now. And that is when the first season, let's call it, of the January 6th hearings will come to an end. We're about to see a play-by-play run-through of the 187 minutes from when the rioters went into the Capitol until when former President Trump tweeted a video telling them to go home. So we thought, hey, let's give you a viewer's guide, right? You're going to watch it here coming up tonight pretty soon. What are we expecting in this prime time finale for now, right? But not for good. No spoilers, don't worry. But first, what we're going to see that we haven't seen before. We're going to have that question. What will be new? It's possible we get a first look at some of the outtakes from the speech that Mr. Trump gave the day after the Capitol attack and how close the rioters got to members of Congress. Apparently some video of lawmakers escaping the House chamber and gallery that will be new. Two, what are we going to hear from tonight's two witnesses? You see them here. I think they're right behind me. Sarah Matthews and Matthew Pottinger. Both are White House aides who quit. They resigned after everything that went down on January 6th. They both did taped depositions. Here's a little taste of what we saw in those.
The situation was already bad. And so it felt like he was pouring gasoline on the fire by tweeting that.
I read that tweet and made a decision at that moment to resign.
Talking about the tweet when then President Trump said attacked his then vice president, saying he didn't have the courage to go through this plan to steal the election. Third thing, what was Donald Trump doing when the Capitol was getting attacked? Or maybe more importantly, what was he not doing? Congressman Adam Kinzinger, who is going to be co-running tonight's show, gave us a little preview. Watch.
To the best of my recollection, he was always in the dining room.
I think everybody was watching the TV.
It's my understanding he was watching television.
Was the violence Capitol visible on the screen on the television? Yes.
And then there's this big argument here from the committee, right? Not only they're going to lay out, not only they say, did Donald Trump not do anything when the Capitol was being attacked, but he enjoyed it. He liked it, right? They say he was happy, gleeful even, that this was going down, that he didn't want it to stop. That is what they are going to lay out in just a matter of hours from now. And then there's this other big question that you might be asking, which is, OK, is this making any kind of difference politically? Tonight, for the first time, we're getting a snapshot of that from a new NPR poll showing, yeah, people are watching, including 44% of Republicans. Most Americans, a majority of them, 60%, have tuned into at least some of the hearings. But look here, the number of people who think the president should be charged, that hasn't really changed. About 50%. Those who think the president will be charged, even less, just 28%. Hallie Vitale is on Capitol Hill. And Hallie, we're going to talk more about that polling in a second. But what is interesting here is, as we look ahead now to tonight, the new pieces of information that you are getting from the folks you're talking to on the Hill. We didn't hear from former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. He was in Washington. He avoided that DOJ contempt of Congress charge for not speaking to the committee. He's not speaking to reporters like your producer, Haley Talbot. Let me show folks that.
The president's opinions obviously speak for themselves.
Would you continue to work with him?
Again, I'm not commenting on anything that relates to the president running or January 6th.
And we bring that up, Hallie, because this hearing, and again, the last one for now but not for good, kind of leaves us with some cliffhangers. Are they going to call Donald Trump, for example?
Yeah. And that is one of the open questions here, Hallie. And that's something that I asked Congresswoman Luria in my exclusive with her before the hearing, something I've been asking a lot of members of this committee, frankly, because that is one of the things that they say they are actively deliberating at this point. But they do draw a distinction between calling Trump and calling Pence. This is the distinction that Congresswoman Luria talked to me about. Listen.
If we called in Donald Trump, do you think he's really going to come in and sit down under oath and speak truthfully? Like, it's one of those kind of things where, we need to hear what he knows, and only one person can be inside Donald Trump's mind. And it's just a question of, do we think that he's actually going to sit down and share that?
So, look, she's drawing the distinction of, do we actually think that former President Trump would even come in if we asked him to? Then when I asked her about former Vice President Mike Pence, the thing that Luria brought up to me is he's had an orbit that has been very cooperative, especially when you contrast them against the Mark Meadows and the Dan Scavinos and the Peter Navarros and the Steve Bannons of the world, who have shunned and stonewalled the committee at every turn. So the fact that this is still an active conversation is pretty interesting to those of us up here.
Yeah, no kidding, Al. Okay, so let me talk about another bucket here. We love buckets on this show, which is the bucket of these live witnesses, because you and I are going to be part, I know, of this primetime coverage tonight on NBC News Now and then on NBC News on the network side. And we're looking at the two people. Sarah Matthews is on the right. She's like a former press aide, basically. She's somebody, I interacted with her when I covered the Trump administration. She sat there where the press aides sit, talk to reporters, would talk to people in the Oval Office, et cetera. The guy on the left was Matthew Pottinger, high level, right? Somebody who, by the way, would also hold briefings, for reporters at times. He is somebody who was a former journalist, former Marine, kind of an interesting person here. Former Deputy National Security Advisor who was around the Oval Office the night of the 6th, the day of the 6th. This is going to be, I think, very interesting testimony from these two.
Well, yeah, because their testimony doesn't just bring you inside the White House with what the former president was doing, though our understanding is that they and others will certainly place him in the dining room watching television. And it's why Congresswoman Luria told me they're probably going to show some clips of Fox News to give a sense of what he was watching when he was sitting in the dining room, not acting to quell the violence here on the Hill. But what these two witnesses also show, Hallie, are people who served in the administration, in Matt Pottinger's case, served all 4 years and rose through the ranks of Trump world, but found their breaking point on January 6th and resigned right after that. We also know that they weren't alone. There were cabinet members, there were others who found their breaking point after serving for years in this administration because of the actions of the former president that day.
We talked about that NPR polling, Allie, right? Because I think there is this. Can we be like real talk for a second? Because there's this thing that happens, I think, with pundits, right? Like, you know what I mean? Where people go, do people care? Is this breaking through? Like, what are the hearings telling Americans? And you can debate the merits of asking that question at all. But this NPR poll actually did and found that people are paying attention, but it probably has only marginally changed minds, if at all, maybe a little bit with independents, but not so much with Democrats and Republicans, right? It found that this is not a mobilizing issue for voters. People still care about inflation and about abortion rights, depending on your party. That's what's getting people, you see it on the screen, that's what's driving people to the polls. But what's also interesting is when you talk about whether it's changed the minds of people about whether the former president should be charged or not, what the committee is really saying, and I know hone in on this so much, what the committee is really saying is, it feels like, hey, DOJ, ball's in your court now.
Yeah. Well, they definitely are saying that. And the DOJ, of course, kind of pumped their own brakes publicly, trying to reset expectations, saying, hey, we don't do any of this stuff publicly. You guys can keep calling on us and appealing on us to do more. But if we are doing more or if we're doing less, we're not going to tell you about it. I think the real talk answer, though, to the idea of is this moving metrics is it almost doesn't matter. Like, these hearings are meant to be for the public record, for public accountability, in the name of the foundational principle of this country, which is a free and fair election and the peaceful transfer of power between those elections. And that's something that the committee regularly turns to. A lot of these members have political implications back home. Congresswoman Luria, she's a frontline Democrat in a tough-to-win district in Virginia. Congresswoman Liz Cheney, the vice chair of this committee, getting no love from Republicans and a Trump-backed challenger back home in Wyoming because she's been so outspoken about this and against the former president. They have regularly tried to elevate this above politics, though, for this very reason. Whether it's moving metrics politically, perhaps isn't the point for this committee. Maybe one of the rare moments on the Hill where it's not done for overt political reasons.
Hallie, Vitale, a big night for you. I know, a busy one. Appreciate you being with us to start it off. Thanks. We've got some breaking news now on a key piece of evidence the January 6th committee does not have that they would like before tonight. And those are texts from the Secret Service on and around January 5th and 6th. Two sources tell our NBC News team that the Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General is now launching a criminal investigation into why those texts were apparently deleted, right? The committee wants to see them, these messages, because they want to know if these texts back up testimony that we heard from Cassidy Hutchinson, remember, a former White House aide, who said the former president was so upset that he couldn't go to the Capitol that he had apparently, allegedly, an altercation with one of his Secret Service agents about it. Julia Ainsley is behind that byline with Pete Williams for us here at NBC News. She joins us now. So the Inspector General, Julia, says the Secret Service has to stop this internal investigation into these missing texts. And that's because they don't want anything to mess with now this criminal investigation, right?
That's right. They used the words ongoing criminal investigation in a letter that they sent to the Secret Service last night, Hallie. Now, the Secret Service is now now under the understanding that they are part of a criminal investigation. Although they found out about it last night, they're not sure exactly when this started. But it's complicated for them, Hallie, because they are also trying to comply with the National Archives and with the January 6th committee to explain to them why these texts were lost. But now they're being told, wait a second, don't touch anything. There's now an ongoing criminal investigation. And I have to point out, Hallie, just because there's a criminal investigation does not mean that the Inspector General necessarily thinks that these text messages were intentionally deleted. Of course, that's the question behind this whole thing. Was the Secret Service covering up for President Trump? We still don't know that. And just because there's a criminal investigation, that doesn't necessarily mean that either. But what it does say to us is that the Inspector General thinks that it is worth looking at the evidence to see if there were criminal violations, possibly violating the national records laws.
Really quickly, Julia, what are we hearing from the Secret Service on this front today?
Well, just that they're going to comply, and they obviously don't want to run astray of the rules here. But they also say, look, it's a little complicated for us. We're going to do our best to comply. And they've also told us, Hallie, we have to point out that they did warn their employees to hold on to their records. Unfortunately, they say not many of them listen to that.
Julia Ainsley, great reporting. Thank you for bringing it to us tonight. I appreciate it. To something else totally different. The thing that you're probably talking about with like a lot of your friends and family, how gross it is outside, how wet it is outside, how hot and humid almost all of us are feeling right now, with even more record highs expected today and then through the weekend. Remember, it's summer, it's hot, sure, but as we've been talking about, this isn't regular hot. This is scary, dangerous hot. It is deadly hot, and we saw that in Dallas today, where a 66-year-old woman died from the heat. She had some underlying health conditions, but this is the country's first heat-related death this summer. It comes as we know now that New York City, where I am tonight, could be looking at its longest heat wave in a decade. Look at Oklahoma City and Houston. They're going to be over 100 again today. More than 60% of Missouri, right, is either abnormally dry or in drought. And that's a problem for cattle farmers there. They're worried they could lose their livestock, lose their crops. Listen.
There was kind of the perfect storm with humidity and high temps. That's the death sentence for cattle.
Dasha Burns is joining us live now. So, Dasha, you are there in Missouri. Let me start with this heat wave itself, right? Tell me what it's like, what you're hearing from folks on the ground.
Yeah, Hallie, well, this heat certainly doesn't feel great for me as a human, but it's really tough for these friends of ours behind me here. The cattle, they have a really hard time regulating body temperature. Ranchers all across the Great Plains are extremely concerned about that right now. And just in the last couple of hours, the governor of Missouri issued drought alerts for almost half of the counties in this state. And in Kansas, they're facing their worst drought in 30 years. And right now, for a lot of agriculture, for farmers, this is also a critical time for crops. We were just down the road here at a farm that grows pumpkins and soybeans. The farmer there, Steve Fry, telling me that for soybeans, if this kind of a drought continues, you'll see a lower yield. For pumpkins, this is one of those things you don't even think about, Hallie. They need bees to pollinate to make those pumpkins grow. Bees can't fly. They don't fly in these kinds of temperatures. So this kind of heat really disrupts entire ecosystems, and both farmers and consumers consumers are going to really feel that impact in the coming months, in the fall and in the winter, Hallie.
Dasha Burns. What else do you need to know, Dasha, before I let you go?
Just in terms of the cattle here, I want you to hear from Casey Cattle Company owner Patrick Montgomery about the costs that farmers are often facing as well. Take a listen.
If you have a drought year, hay prices go up. Even without it being a drought directly here in Missouri, if you're buying hay out of Texas or another state that's affected by drought, those prices go up.
It's a big effort to keep these cattle cool. You know, last month during the heat wave, 2,000 cattle died in Kansas. Those were mostly at feed yards, Hallie, where cows are really crammed in. Here at Casey Cattle Company, they've got space, they've got shade, they've got water, but it's always a challenge with large livestock and temperatures like this.
Dasha Burns, thank you for being there. Appreciate it. One of the biggest container ports in the country virtually shut down again today because of these trucker protests happening in the San Francisco Bay Area. And this might even become an issue for you if you have any plans to do some shopping in the next few months. Back to school shopping, maybe just upgrading your fall wardrobe. You've got hundreds of trucks blocking the terminals. OK, you might be thinking, well, why? Why are drivers protesting? It's because of this gig economy law from 2019. The truckers say basically forces them to be classified as employees instead of having the freedom to be independent drivers. OK. Next question you might ask is, well, what does it mean for me? How does this affect my life? The toy industry, other industries, they're getting ready to go into their big season for bringing in stuff from overseas. You've got retailers stockpiling things for fall holidays, for back to school season. I mean, remember those huge Canadian trucker protests from a few months ago? Those shut down car factories. They caused production cuts. They made a whole mess of the supply chain. If people don't figure out a solution soon, you might see more of the same here. Let me bring in Jake Ward, who's following this for us. Jake, this law passed in 2019. That was 3 years ago. Why is it getting so much attention now? What's up with this timing?
Well, Hallie, it has to do with the fact that the Supreme Court had essentially put truckers aside. They weren't being touched by this law for about 2 years, and now it is coming due. It is beginning to come down upon them. And that is why truckers all across California are so outraged. They just say their livelihood is going to be affected. Let me talk you through AB 5, Assembly Bill 5, which is what made this whole thing possible. It was written, as you mentioned, as a protection for gig workers. The whole idea was that it would make it harder for a company to classify their workers as anything except employees. The whole idea was to try to keep companies from taking advantage of workers by classifying them as gig workers. Unfortunately, it is coming down hardest right now on these 70,000 truckers across the state because they fall into that category. And so we've been speaking with truckers at the protests here. Here's how a couple of them describe the stakes. Have a listen.
To make you more responsible for everything that's going on with your truck and the cargo you're hauling.
That will increase our costs and, you know, not just costs, and it takes a lot of hassle.
By some estimates, a private owner-operator, a freelancer who drives a truck, can make as much as 3 times more in take-home pay than a trucker who works as an employee for a company. And so that is definitely the big thing that these truckers seem to be so worried about, Hallie.
Where do they want this to go from here? And then talk through a little bit of the part that we talked about in the introduction here, which is the roadblock to business, if you will, right? For people living in this country who are looking for, who want their stuff in a timely fashion.
Well, that's right. First of all, we at NBC reached out to the California governor's office to find out when this will actually start to be enforced. And there have been a couple of different responses. It's not entirely clear when the law really will start to be actively enforced. But the governor's office essentially said that the landscape is going to change, that we're all going to need to adapt, and that the companies that run trucks are going to need to come up with a new arrangement with their drivers, perhaps having to treat them as employees, that kind of model. And, the stakes here are so interesting because, Hallie, this was originally written as the kind of law that was going to protect gig workers, right? Food delivery drivers and Uber and Lyft drivers. Well, once that law had passed, the companies that employ those, or I shouldn't say employ, that use those kinds of workers, companies like Uber and Lyft, put money behind their own Proposition 22, and passed that. And that wound up exempting the very companies that were supposed to be affected by that. It's only truckers, event planners, independent journalists who are now being affected by this law. Very, very complicated. And why does it affect you and me? Well, it's because if you're going to buy a bottle of California wine or give a gift of California almonds, you're going to be affected by the slowdown at this, the 8th largest port in the country. The exports and the imports all coming to a standstill right now, Hallie.
Jake Ward, live for us there in the Bay Area. Jake, good to see you. Thank you. Coming up here on the show, we are hearing now from Ricky Martin, you know, superstar singer here. For the first time since a judge threw out a restraining order now against him and his nephew, who claimed the two were in a relationship, dropped his case against him. What Martin's saying now. Plus, the monarch butterfly, one step closer to extinction. We've got more about that devastating decline coming up. Pop star Ricky Martin, huge global superstar, speaking now today after his nephew dropped harassment claims against him in Puerto Rico. Listen to part of this video given to NBC by the singer's reps.
It has been devastating for me, for my family, for my friends. I don't wish this upon anybody.
Martin's 21-year-old nephew had been accusing him of having a 7-month-long romantic relationship with him and harassing him and stalking him afterward, according to documents obtained by Telemundo and shared with NBC News. That led to a temporary restraining order against Martin, which the judge in court today ended also, right, dropping that. In a virtual court hearing, Martin's nephew said he didn't need the protection order anymore, a court spokesperson told NBC News. Gabe Gutierrez joins us now. And Gabe, these are some pretty serious accusations to make and then suddenly drop against one of the most famous people in the world. Fill us in on some of the details here and these missing blanks.
Hey there, Hallie. Well, yes, a very bizarre case. And these allegations first surfaced a couple of weeks ago when, as you mentioned, a man filed for this restraining order, claiming that Ricky Martin had been in a 7-month romantic relationship with him. Later, Martin's attorneys confirmed to NBC News that this was the 21-year-old nephew who filed for this restraining order. He claimed that he not only had a relationship with Martin, he claimed that the pop singer had been seen outside of his residence at least 3 separate times, that he now feared for his safety. But today, there was that virtual court hearing where the judge was supposed to decide whether to extend this restraining order. That's what this court hearing was about. It was a civil proceeding, not criminal. But when the attorneys got there, apparently this nephew decided to drop the claims. And so the judge dismissed the case at this point. Still unclear exactly why, at this point, the nephew decided to drop these claims. Hallie.
Martin has brought in some serious legal firepower here, Gabe, right? A lawyer from Hollywood who once repped, Bill Cosby and Martin Sheen. They've denied his allegations since the beginning. And I think we're hearing more from them now tonight, right, about Martin moving on.
Yeah, Marty Singer. I mean, he's very well known in Hollywood circles. He's represented, as you said, some very prominent celebrities. And from the beginning, Singer called these allegations not only untrue, but disgusting. Today, we heard from Ricky Martin himself. He put out that video, which you played in your introduction. And then we also heard from the attorney for Martin in Puerto Rico. Our team spoke with him. Take a listen.
Unfortunately, this type of thing happened, and they're going to continue to happen through life. But there, in the courts, there are many false accusations.
So, Hallie, again, Ricky Martin, pop star with millions of fans around the world. This is a type of scandal that could potentially derail a career, and that's why this was getting so much attention. But again, now, today, a judge has decided to dismiss these claims after the nephew who accused him of this romantic relationship pulled back and essentially said he didn't want this restraining order anymore, Hallie.
Gabe Gutierrez, thank you for bringing us that update. Appreciate it, friend. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, the Italian prime minister quit today, forcing the president to dissolve parliament altogether. Mario Draghi's resignation comes after several key parties in his coalition boycotted a confidence vote in the government. Draghi was a key figure, a key person in this response from the West in Russia's war in Ukraine. He's going to stay on as a caretaker, kind of, until the country holds an election in September, given the political crisis there, surging inflation. Number 2, not too long before Dave Chappelle was set to hit the stage in Minneapolis, the venue canceled his sold-out show. Just hours before it was supposed to happen, the popular theater First Avenue declined to host the show after getting backlash online. Remember, Chappelle's been criticized this year after his Netflix special, The Closer, included transphobic jokes. Number 3, the Marines are set to have their first black 4-star general in its 246-year history. Lieutenant General Michael Langley has served in the Marines for more than 35 years. If confirmed, he will make history for leading all U.S. he will be leading all U.S. military forces in Africa as Chief of U.S. Africa Command. Number 4, former Minneapolis police officer Thomas Lane was sentenced to 2.5 years on federal charges for his role in George Floyd's killing. Lane held Floyd's legs as Derek Chauvin pinned him for nearly 9.5 minutes. The 2 other officers were also convicted of violating Floyd's civil rights and will be sentenced later on. Number 5, the monarch butterfly now officially endangered. Researchers say as many as 3/4 of the population might have died in the past decade, adding that they're basically putting the monarch butterfly on the red list of threatened species. It's the first time it's been added to the endangered list, and it's because of climate change and the destruction of its habitat. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our New York bureau, another shark attack off Long Island. The 6th one in the past few weeks. A shark bit a 16-year-old boy's right foot. Left a 4-inch cut. That's not great. Luckily, this teenager was able to walk out of the water and then get to the hospital for a treatment under his own power. From our Midwest bureau, a Walgreens employee in Wisconsin refused to sell condoms to a couple. Why? Religious reasons. In a statement to NBC, the company said the employee did not violate their policies. This move is still having some people, though, call for a Walgreens boycott. From our Southeast bureau, a Georgia elementary school is unveiling a new logo the parents there say kind of looks like a Nazi symbol. It shows the mascot, an eagle, over the school's initials, ES. But some parents were saying it looks like the Nazi war eagle a little bit. The district says they're not going to go forward with this new logo. So tonight's original now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been keeping an eye on. And tonight we're looking at band camp. Not the kind with instruments, right? But BANNED, banned books, that kind of camp for students in Texas who want to read books they wouldn't normally otherwise be able to get their hands on at school. That's mostly because of a new state law that lets school officials take books off shelves. Often those books end up being about race or sexuality. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock went to check out one of those summer band camps in Austin.
Summer might be a time some kids take a break from books.
This past year, our school has removed about 11 books from our classroom libraries.
But not this summer for a group of high school students in Austin who see urgency in discussing this literature.
And you'd be very shocked how many of these books that we've read that have become some of our favorites.
Literally taken out of their classrooms.
If you had to say, what do you think is the commonality that connects all of the books that are banned here?
It's very much fear-driven, being afraid and uncomfortable having conversations with their children about the subjects in these books.
This forum, sponsored by the Austin Public Library and Book People, the largest independent bookstore in Texas, is called Band Camp and has really struck a chord.
Our local community members reached out to us to see what we could do, what voice that we had in preventing this from happening in our local schools.
The answer, the banned section at the bookstore, drawing titles removed by schools across the country and including everything from an indigenous people's history of the United States to novels like Lawn Boy, telling the journey of a biracial gay adult flagged by some schools for being sexually explicit.
What voices are being squashed? And what voices are being elevated?
When I look at the list of the books that are being challenged currently, it is a majority of BIPOC voices, people of color, and queer voices, and people who identify as LGBTQ+.
The state of Texas passed a law in 2021 that initially focused on reviewing any literary content having to do with race, but then expanded to human sexuality. One of the law's supporters, Matt Krause, says the point is age-appropriate content for students and historical accuracy.
I don't think anybody's saying we shouldn't talk about anything that we've done wrong in the past, especially in terms of race. What I think we are saying is having a stilted view or a tainted view of those race relations. So we don't want that in there.
Krause compiled a list of about 850 books sent to Texas school districts as a guideline for review. More than half dealing with LGBTQ topics, also race and sex education.
How did you come up with the 850 or so books that are on that list?
Yeah, and I appreciate that question, but we've been very consistent ever since that's come out. The nature of the General Investigating Committee, we don't divulge into the inner workings of how we come up with that.
What percentage of those books, if you had to ballpark, have you read yourself?
Not very many of those, but again, you didn't need to read them to know that they either had to deal with race or they had to deal with sexuality.
They're trying to keep these kids like locked in a box, and like I'm part Korean, so I've had to deal with a lot of the different racial stuff that is in books like these.
Many students at this meeting belong to the Leander Independent School District, which told NBC News they established a review process predating the Texas law, bringing more than 100 stakeholders, including parents, educators, and students, to the table. Though not the students, for the review of these books, out of an abundance of caution for material that could be inappropriate. The district pulled or paused 16 titles. 5 were actually reinstated. Here's a look at some, including The Handmaid's Tale, removed from classrooms, but not libraries. There are written summaries of why. Sex and racism feature prominently in those reports.
Do you consider what's happening in your school district to be censorship?
Entirely. It's people being afraid of different philosophies, different ideas, different just differences.
There's people in power above us, I mean the school board, at the state level, everywhere, and they're taking away educational material from us because it's something that some people don't exactly understand or are comfortable with, so they're taking it away for all students.
Sam Brock is joining us now live. So Sam, I mean, super interesting story there. Talk about why Texas is on the front lines of this culture war issue, because there's a lot there, especially as it relates to the political landscape.
There is a lot there, Hallie, and just for general context, PEN America has a list of all the books that have been banned by schools across the country, 1,586. Texas is number one with 713, so completely over-indexing. About half those books go into Texas. In case you're wondering, number 2, Pennsylvania, then Florida. As it concerns Texas, Texas is very much keyed in and had been over the last couple of years on CRT, critical race theory, which of course is a college-level concept, but however you define it, there is sensitivity right now about what sort of materials and conversations around race are happening in classrooms, and parents want to say. But that kind of opened up Pandora's box, Hallie, once that was established, to also reviewing issues of sexuality, gender identification, sex education, and a whole host of issues that are now on the table in Texas and many other states as well.
Sam, what surprised you the most as you were out there doing this, band camp story for us here? Was there anything where you went, like, I'm really shocked to hear that?
I think the concept of banning books in general is concerning to many people because it's often a sign, a signal that a dictatorship or some sort of authoritarian rule could be implemented. That's sort of the early signs that there's always been issues with censorship and conversations around that. And I will say, when I went through some of the individual write-ups, not just in Leander schools where we were, but also nearby Eanes, there was references to very explicit sexual acts. And I could understand why some parents might have issues with that. But the students would come back and tell you, well, look, you need to look at the narrative arcs of the stories and understand what the author is trying to convey, to try to show people, and how it would be digested by those who have a different perspective than maybe what we're used to. And the bottom line for many of these students is they feel like the parents are not comfortable confronting those topics, so they don't want to bring them into the classroom. But there are some very sensitive issues. It's a gray area. It's not necessarily black and white, but the idea of taking these out of circulation is what is bothering so many people.
Sam Brock, live for us with that great reporting on tonight's Original. Sam, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Coming up, you know what's back? Comic-Con, baby. That's right. The comic book convention returning for the first time since the pandemic. Even though COVID cases are going up, we're going to talk about what's being done that might surprise you to stay safe. For the past couple of years, we've all had to get used to wearing masks, right? But for some people, they've trained for it their whole lives. And now they get to show it off at Comic-Con. the comic book convention that everybody around the world knows, right? Very famous. It is back in San Diego for the first time since the pandemic started, but COVID still hangs over it. Even if everybody there really is a superhero, there are some concerns this could become a super spreader event. More than 100,000 people are expected there as California's COVID testing rate, more and more people in California are testing positive. So just because Comic-Con is back doesn't mean people are getting in. Look at the line snaking down the street. That is not to meet your favorite comic book superhero. It's for COVID checks. I want to bring in now NBC News Channel correspondent Jennifer Borkland from the convention itself. Hey, Jen, good to see you. Talk about how they're managing some of these COVID concerns here.
Hey, Hallie, good to see you. Yeah, I got to tell you, this is the thing to have. This little orange bracelet will get you into the convention center. It is your COVID health check. And this is the most stringent screening in the country right now. It's like what you used to have to do to get back into the United States if you were traveling internationally, a COVID test within 72 hours of arriving or a vaccination card. You have to prove that and, go through a few health checks where you say you're feeling fine and all of that. We all know what that's about. Inside the convention center, masks are mandatory, and we're not talking about the superhero mask. We're talking about over the nose and mouth. You know the drill. Most people here had a little bit of a mixed reaction to that.
With it being Comic-Con, it's an international petri dish. So with people coming in from so many places in the world, I understand the reasoning. Do I like it? No. So, I don't want to put the money toward this and not be able to show it off. I mean, you don't dress like this and not want to be seen.
Right? I mean, look at that beautiful makeup. So she said they're going to have a few outdoor days, and then they're going to go with a different costume that has masks over the face to go inside tomorrow.
I love that so much because, yes, do you paint yourself in all blue to not be seen? No, you do not. Right? You are screaming out for some visibility on that front. So I hope I'm glad we're showing them here. What is the big draw, right? I mean, after 3 years of Comic-Con not being around, and I've been there once. It was in like 2014. I was a baby reporter for NBC, and it was like so cool. It was so exciting. What's the big thing now? Like, what are you hearing a lot of attention around besides like the COVID piece of things, or is that dominating it?
Oh, not really. I mean, there's hardly any talk about it at all. The line is long to get your health check if you didn't plan ahead. That's a given. But once you're inside, the Funko stuff is everywhere. Another huge thing, besides we're at NBCU Corner, where they're promoting all these NBC shows and new premieres.
Do we see some Minions there,
Mondays
maybe?
This fall on NBC and streaming on Peacock. Yeah, there's everything. I mean, there's nothing you don't see. I saw a guy running by dressed as a strip of bacon and no explanation on that. But 2 hours ago, the new Dungeons and Dragons trailer for the movie dropped, and everybody got to see the first look at the new movie. You think Dungeons and Dragons, is this really something I want to see? Well, it's described as hilarious, action-packed, and Chris Pine and Regé-Jean Page are in it, so Bridgerton fans, that's where he went. Could be good.
You got to get on the D&D train, Jen. We got to get you there. Come aboard, okay? Thank you so much for that live report from Comic-Con. Appreciate you. Appreciate all you for watching this hour. We're going to have a lot more for you here tomorrow, same time, same place. I'll see you tonight on our special coverage for the January 6th hearing. But for now, coverage picks up as we speak.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.